Welcome back, folks, to the Boys in Motion podcast. Today, we're talking about one of the most mentally unhinged endurance challenges. Part of our December challenge here today is the Everest challenge, conducted by Brian Bimman, Biker Man himself, and I can't wait to hear about it. We followed very closely, I know I did, on the Instagram throughout the day and into the night, and I just can't wait to hear about it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Now, this episode won't just be about this one mega cycling effort. It's going to be why endurance athletes in general are just drawn to these super ridiculous, mind-boggling activities. I know lots of people are coming in the feed saying, just watching this is making me exhausted and I can't believe, why are you doing this? So we want to know why the endurance athlete is built differently, built to suffer, and how, for those that have been watching and looking at the BIM December challenge, how these big end of year goals can be the perfect way to stay motivated when races are done and we're going into the new year to light that fire before the next racing season.
Yeah, I love that. And you said built to suffer, and that is true. There were many points where I realized that the challenge, the Everest climb, was not all about fitness. It was about convincing myself to just keep pedaling when literally nothing around me was changing. I was here in the pain cave, same wall, same climb, same thoughts telling me to just end the suffering. And yeah, it was a real challenge. It was a successful challenge, but oh boy, I am excited to not do that for a long time. But yeah, so Everest challenge complete, which is exciting.
That is wild. When you first set out, and I think you just put a ballpark out there, you said X amount of hours, and then you realized really quick that it was going to take you several hours over that estimated time. I guess, first of all, let's tell our viewers what this challenge was about and I guess why it was so brutal. Let's start with the metrics. What was this total feat?
Yeah, it's the perfect place to start. And you joke about it, but it is true. I did not really understand how significant this was when I hopped on the bike in the morning, but I quickly learned. The Everest Challenge, you can do this virtually or live on the roads, but generally what you're doing is a loop of a single climb until you reach the total elevation of Everest from sea level to the tip top. It's about 8,850 meters of elevation. I think I ended up doing 8,858 meters of elevation. It was a total of 13 or 14 full loops of a climb that lasted anywhere between 56 to 1 hour and 10 minutes, depending on what time of the day it was, because as the day dragged on, I definitely got slower and slower. And then the last piece was there was still a remaining kind of 50% climb just to round up to that total Everest elevation. It took me a total of 17 hours and 24 minutes of moving time. And I did have, I think, twice where maybe the clock stopped, maybe not. No, it's all included there in the elapsed time as well. So that is total from hitting that activity go button to ending that ride. So quite significant, the longest day I've had, and one of the hardest, but for different reasons maybe than a lot of people think.
Before we jump into that, and I definitely want to get into the struggles and the experience throughout, because I think there's a lot of interesting nuggets there, I would love to hear about exactly a little bit about the course, how you structured the challenge. Having some friends that have done it outdoors, I would love to hear how the indoor experience was and how it was set up.
Yeah, so the setup was on my Whoosh, so the cycling app, and they have a map that is specifically built for Everesting. It's called Snowfall Mountain, and like I said, it brings you up and down this 650 or so meter climb. and you have to do that a number of times. So basically, the strategy was bike up the climb. You did a small loop at the top, a lollipop at the top, which was like 1 or 2 minutes of easy pedaling. And then as your bike did the descent, the nice thing about doing it virtually is I could hop off the bike, run to the washroom, grab something from the fridge or refill water, whatever it might be. And I had about 6 minutes of descending every round of the climb that I did. And so that 6 minutes was super beneficial because it allowed me to hop off the bike, do a little stretch, whatever it might be, and then keep rolling as I got to the bottom, a little bit of a loop at the bottom on the flats, and then I'm back up. The total distance that I did was 242 kilometers, which I think is probably a little bit more than some people's Everest total distance because I had to do both of those loops, one at the bottom, one at the top, and both of those were like at least half a kilometer or so. So I was gaining a little bit of mileage there.
Now, when I look at on Strava, it looks like the ascents were about 8% grade on average. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say on average, yes, but there were definitely spikier parts. The one thing that I will say is I set my trainer up because you can dynamically adjust how much of the elevation you feel. I turned that down quite a bit so I could just keep pedaling and I wouldn't feel those spikes because there were some that were like up to 17% or so. So on the gradient feel or whatever that setting might be, it was set pretty low.
Yeah, that's wild. And I think, like you said, you were strategically doing things between those loops, refueling, stretching, foam rolling. Did you do anything, let's call it out of the ordinary? I'm just thinking about when I do some longer efforts, like at lunchtime or let's call it dinner time for those, call it bigger meals or bigger intake for carbs or protein.
Yeah, the fueling was a little bit archaic. It was really just like as much food as I could take in. I have no idea if I was like way over 100 grams an hour or way under. I never really felt a bonk, but I definitely felt some gut issues in the latter half a little bit. So I think I was honestly like over 100 grams of carbs per hour, maybe like significantly over. And I will say, people listening to this, I'm sorry, this might be TMI, but I had to go to the washroom to clear out literally every single loop. And I did 14 and a half loops, I think. So I think that is another record for me. The elevation, but also number of times taking a crap was off the charts. I'm so glad that I was able to do it in the comfort of my own home because if I was going up and down the escarpment, oh boy, the Bruce Trail would have a lot of droppings on it, let me tell you. And that might have just been a function of what I was consuming or how much I was consuming, but that was like one of the craziest parts for me is how many times I went to the bathroom. It was crazy.
Frig, so you did extra elevation going up and down those stairs plenty of times too, I would imagine.
Oh yeah.
I
And it was always in a panic because you have such a tight deadline to get back on the bike to keep pedaling. And my goal was to like basically as much as possible only use the descent time. So I was actually always back on my bike by the end of the descent. So there was never a lull in that.
Now, going into it, obviously, maybe there were some changes you would have liked to have made, but what were you taking in? And at any point in the ride, did it change or you had to make a pivot because certain things just weren't hitting the spot?
Yeah, so in terms of what I consumed, the morning was nice, just coffee and oatmeal for that first climb. That was quite a bit. I had a bread roll every single ascent. So that was good as well. Maybe not the last two ascents, but I think I had 14 or so, or a full dozen. And then quite a bit of candy. I was mixing it up. I had the Nerds gummies. I had Twizzlers. I had a few other things, Kit Kat bars. I think I had 5 bananas, a number of dates, 2 packs of... It was a lot. And then a full pack of Kool-Aid, like the sugar Kool-Aid, mixed with electrolytes. And my secret power-up boosters was a Red Bull at the halfway mark, which was clutch. I loved having that. And then what I never showed anybody, and I'm only exposing this now, at the 75% mark, I had a monster the same size. And both of those were like 60 grams of carbs or something with a ton of caffeine. So that got me through the latter half. I burnt a total of 8,240 calories. And I tried to just fuel as much as I could because I knew I was never going to be able to eat that much. But damn, I ate a lot. And so I never bonked, but I definitely had other issues.
So this, I saw your calories burned, and I remember on YouTube and like Instagram, the burn 10K, eat 10K was big at one point, and I never really understood how hard, and people would struggle like crazy on the burn 10K, and I think seeing that you only, I'm using the word only, burned under 9,000 calories doing this challenge, I think really puts into perspective that challenge of burning 10K in 24 hours, that how crazy it is.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And my power wasn't high, and the amount that you burn is a function of that. But like you look at my average heart rate, 128 BPM for 17 and a half hours, that's a significant amount of effort, especially considering there was a drop in that effort every hour or so. Because when I was going up the climbs, I was usually about 135 BPM. And yeah, it was a significant amount of effort and calories burnt, and I don't know like what I would have to do to consume that amount. You'd need to be like having milkshakes and that sort of thing, and I was in no state to be having a ton of milkshakes as well. Yeah, it would have not been pretty.
This is wild. Yeah, like I'm just deep. I guess we're doing a little bit of a deep dive into the stats here. But again, you were, like you said, you were mostly zone one, driving into zone two sometimes, I would imagine, just for your, when you were peaking at the end. Or I know I called you on your last lap and you were dropping the hammer at over 180 watts. I guess maybe walk us through the final push and where you could see the finish line.
Yeah, that's hilarious that you mentioned that. Yeah, so I would say like throughout the day, that first half, I was holding back. So let's call it like the first 6 rounds, I was around 160 watts. And the reason I was like holding back at that point was because I saw so many videos. And by so many, I think I saw two, maybe three, of people who tried this virtually and said either they failed at the halfway point because they just couldn't go any longer, or they really struggled at the end. And most of the complaints there were about failing because they went out too strong. And never having done such an endurance ride, that was something that was critical to me. Yes, I was a little bit more powerful at the start, but I was still under 165 watts, which is like lower than my zone 2 watts by quite a margin. But by the end, let's call it like the last 5 before that last half go, my average watts were lower than my average heart rate for those specific watts, which is crazy. I've never seen that before. So I think at the start I was averaging about an hour on the ascent, and by the end I had peaked at 1 hour and 15 minutes. So that's a 25% slowdown by the end. And then the last half climb up, I smashed it and I tried to hold over 200 watts, and I definitely did. Like I was going quite hard and it just felt really good. I knew the end was near, the endorphins were high. So that was quite a lot of fun, I would say.
Now, one thing I would love to get into, and we have here of why do it indoors. It was in December, so I don't think outdoor was too much of an option. And in Niagara, I think it would have been quite challenging to find a good hill to do this on. But I would love to know what you think would be easier outdoors for this kind of challenge versus what you think would be much, much harder indoors. Because I think just staring at a wall brings a certain set of challenges that the outdoors you would not feel at all.
Yeah, it's definitely give or take. I think the benefit to doing it indoors was the consistency of just being able to hammer out on the bike. Your bike feels flat, which is really nice. You've got all your selection of fuel. It's easy to take that in. You have easy access to the washroom. You could warm food up easily. So in many respects, very nice, very easy. You don't have to contend with sunlight loss either. But I would say the opposite of that is that it just feels like it goes on forever because you don't have any new stimulus. You don't have, yeah, stuff like that. But it's way easier on like the support side of things and the consistency. I would think it's easier to do indoors than outdoors. Now, that being said, like a lot of it does come down to mental, and outdoors might offer a little bit more to the mental side of things. But I think just conditions wise, indoor it made it easier in more ways than being outdoors would. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think it would be easier indoors or outdoors?
That was Andrew took my question. I was going to ask the same thing. I guess there's some pluses to both, I think, and there's some negatives to both. I think the mental side of things on the indoor is just wild to me. I guess you could distract yourself as well, but just like staying in one spot for 17 hours is just wild. At least with the outdoors, you could either have friends do portions of it with you, right? You have a different
That's true.
different stimulus, like you said. Again, finding the right amount of elevation in certain cities must be hard for some people. But yeah, it's either way. I don't know. I honestly would don't know what I'd rather do, especially like you said, with the amount of bathroom breaks and the amount of food you have to take in. You almost need to have some sort of home base almost, and then even then you're descending, but then you're stopping every time too.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is like indoors, you can just leave the bike while you're descending. Outdoors, you actually need to do that descent so many times, so you don't
And
have that
focus
off.
too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I think for that reason, probably easier indoors. I don't think easy either way. What I might think is if you're climbing outdoors, you can actually get up and move a little more dynamically on your bike, which might actually aid some of the body discomfort that you start to feel on the trainer. Because I was never really going up, like off the seat. I was seated most of the time, just pedaling flat at 70 to 80 RPM the whole day. And so for that reason, I think outdoors would be nice because in those spikier parts, you can actually just use your body weight to climb up, whereas I had none of that.
Now, I think you pushed the discomfort on the bike to the absolute max. So I'd love to hear some of your tips for someone gearing up for their longest ride, maybe doing an Everesting. What kind of tips you use to stay as comfortable as possible through the attempt?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I did a few things. One, I had Vaseline, so I was able to continue to lube up, which was really nice. I had multiple bib short swap outs. So I think after, call it the first 4 hours, I swapped, and every 4 hours after that, I swapped, which was really nice. And I also changed socks. The last thing that I did was I was taking my shoes off between the rounds just to let the shoes air out and also let my feet air out a little bit and just move a little bit. And then lastly, given that it's cold outside, it was really nice to be able to go outside, cool down a little. If you don't have that option because you're doing it in the summer or something, cold liquids really help keep that body temperature down. That was the one thing that I started to struggle with was just body heat. I have 3 fans on me in the pain cave, and even so, I wish there was more because once you're in the room, you're just locked in. Other than that, having a foam roller, having different tools that I could use during those descents, during those off pieces was really nice. And then every 5 to 10 minutes, when I would remember, I would just get off the seat, even if it was for like 3 pedal strokes, just to maybe have my bones sit somewhere else or just relieve the pressure and go right back. But I would say, yeah, having as much changing around you as possible is good. I would even move where my hands were many times. I did get into one position sometimes where I would just have my hands on the drops, forehead on the towel, right down on the desk, and I would just lay there with my eyes closed, counting the pedal strokes. I ended up doing that a few times near the end, which was good. It allowed me to just like rest my neck and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was quite hilarious. I was just, yeah, doing anything I could to keep passing the time.
Funny story. I actually caught myself almost falling asleep on the tri bike doing that once. I went right down, and I was just literally like counting sheep, counting my pedal strokes, and I like nodded off, and I was like, oh, gotta wake up, gotta keep biking. So I could see how that was like your form of relaxation. Just, I guess, we're just grilling you here today. This is your turn to be grilled. So another question I have, just thinking about myself with some longer indoor rides, is I can't stay focused on one thing like to pass the time. So I have a million things going on at the same time. And for a 2-3 hour ride, I can't imagine what you had to go through for 17 hours. So walk us through a couple things you did to pass the time.
Yeah, so this is fair. When I'm doing my easy, like zone one, zone two rides indoors, I'm often plugging away at work, just like running experiments, whatever it might be, and just like actually doing stuff on the computer. I did not have the mental bandwidth to do that on this ride. I didn't start doing that early, and then by the time I was like, oh, maybe I'll start doing this, let's say at 11 a.m. after a few hours, I just already didn't have the mental bandwidth to do that. So working was out of the question. So what did I end up doing? It was just a lot of YouTube. Honestly, I watched too much YouTube. I watched some cycling videos. I watched some Visma Lisa Bike, like their team documentaries. I watched the Ultra Swim, where the guy swam 510 kilometers in, I think, 56 hours. That was a really good watch. Would recommend that. It's free on YouTube and available. I watched some like some police officer live cam footage videos and like other investigative stuff. Yeah, so it was just like any brain dead content that I could put on or some motivating stuff that I could put on was really nice. And then I ended the day with a little bit of hockey because the Leafs and Sens were playing and the Rascal was at the game, so I was trying to spot her in the crowds.
Yeah, can't go wrong with going down some rabbit holes on YouTube. I love those police investigator videos. Those get me every time, actually, as well. No, that's good. I'm glad you stayed busy.
Yeah, that was the one thing. And then the other hilarious thing was in my loopiness, I was trying to do math. So I had the calculator app up and I was always just calculating what percentage am I at? Once I'm done this one, like how much is left? And 50% of it was wrong because my brain wasn't working very well, but it was just hilarious, like always just negotiating against myself on how far I had gone and how far remains and that sort of thing. I literally right now do not know how many times I went up and down that hill because I tried to calculate it so many times and I just like halfway through I would just get lost and say, oh, I don't actually care. Who cares?
We got a firsthand look at that because your stories were also just as loopy. You're like, all right, I'm on lap 10. I got 5 to go. And then next hour, you're like, all right, I think I'm on number 8. I still got 10 to go. Like you were just saying some woozy stuff.
I think we've reached the time of the episode where I feel like we got to do the mental deep dive. You talked about the loopiness. We all saw it. And if you didn't, as Tyler mentioned, Brian was stories to Instagram throughout the day. And there was a couple of them where you were talking about how hard it was getting and having doubts about finishing, about picking this challenge. So I'd love to hear a little bit of that first moment that the doubt started creeping in.
Yeah, so I think the first 3 rounds were quite good. So that would be coming into the 4th hour, basically, because including the sort of top loops that I'd need to do and the descent, it was usually at the start about an hour and 20 minutes per climb. But yeah, I definitely felt sort of the power get let go in that in that 4th ascent. And that's about where the day like started getting difficult and I started having those first doubts of potentially not being able to accomplish this feat. I would say one of the lowest points was actually around the time that Tyler called me, which was about 40% of the way through. So still quite early. And I leveled with him. I said, I might end up just going to half and stopping. How much of that was actual muscular exhaustion? I would say that's quite low. What a lot of it was just the gut feeling not great, being really bored, and just starting to feel the legs just like totally give out, because I'd never like pedaled at such low wattage and felt so bad that it started feeling like I'm going to be going nowhere. But I would say once I got to the halfway mark, I was too invested to stop. And there's so much social pressure. And realistically, I wasn't going to stop, but there were definitely those doubts around the 40% mark of the why. So after the first third was where it really got the most difficult. And then by the time I had gotten to the 60%, that Red Bull had kicked in. It started becoming process. And yes, it got tougher, but there wasn't that voice yelling at me of, you can't do this. At a certain point, I just realized you just keep repeating the same thing that happened in the last hour, this hour, and you'll get through it. But it definitely just felt like a long, boring achievement while I was doing it. Once I was done, it was great, but it wasn't this huge relief of having accomplished some huge goal. It was really just, thank God I'm done and let's go to bed, basically. And yeah. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I would say the toughest part was in that first half, but after the first third.
Yeah, when I called you, I was like, "Oh God, this is real," because I could see that you were like a bit discouraged, and you're like, basically, why the heck am I doing this?" And I was just like, "Holy, I know that you're obviously a friggin' wagon on the bike," and I was like, "This is tough for him. I can't imagine how hard this is." And I was just racking through my brain. Okay, maybe one day I'll try to do half of it. So 4,500 meters elevation, but that 8,000 is just wild.
And this is 100% would be my recommendation to anybody who wants to try this. I'm glad that I did the Everest before doing the half, but I think I may have mentioned this to you, which is if you want to get the Everest experience, but you don't want to spend a full day on the bike, do the half Everest, because it's just as bad in my opinion. Because after you hit the halfway point, it's just more of the same shit. But in that, there was a moment there around the halfway
It's
point
just
that it
slower.
was just so bad, because you've hit that point where it just like starts to really hurt. It's like they say about ultra marathons, and this is why the ultras are so nice, is you can like ebb and flow of feeling good, feeling bad, and you can recover and that sort of thing. And I really did feel that throughout the day, which is nice. That's a good feeling, to have those bad moments and then actually come out and still be doing that activity. And then, yeah, sure, you might get down in the dumps again, but more and more repetitions of this, you start to realize that those bad times will pass in these really long endurance efforts.
Nice, yeah, that's crazy. I know you had mentioned previous with the 50K run that you hadn't really felt that ebb and flow. So it sounds like you definitely got to that place on that, which is nice, because I feel like you've got to get there so that you know how it feels. And then next time you're doing something similar, you can think back to the down point and then going back up, which I think is like pretty cool, because you can actually link it back to that moment. The one piece you said is at the top of the episode is that this was one of the hardest things that you'd done. And I would love to know, like, of the big crazy endurance events, activities that you've participated in, where this ranks, and if there is anything that's harder to compare those.
Yeah, and this is where, actually leading off the top, I mentioned that this was bad and it was tough, but for certain reasons, and those reasons might surprise people. So I would rank an all-out 5K harder than this. Like, the pain that you feel going through a tough, intense effort, a VO2 max session, in many ways is more difficult than this. There was no point in this where the intensity was so high that I ever thought about stopping, because there was never a moment where the intensity was high. The difficult part about this was the suffering from the drag of time that this took, from the boring repetition of having to do a 1 hour climb 13, 14 times. But in terms of things that I would rank more difficult, I would say a marathon is far more difficult. It is way harder on your body. You actually feel like you can't go on in many like running events because this doesn't have the same impact on your body, nor does it have the same intensity that a like racing a marathon might have. I would say, yeah, I would say those like spikier, harder, intense sessions in many ways are more difficult, but it's a different kind of suffering. So this isn't that searing pain. This is a pain of boredom that just eats away at you hour after hour, pedal stroke after pedal stroke. And then the thing about this is that when you're 30-40% of the way in and really starting to feel some of that like low intensity pain, that is going to be like, I think there was still 12 hours remaining when I first was like, I don't think I can keep doing this. Whereas in a VO2 max session, you might be 400 meters through a 600-meter piece, and you only have 30 seconds left, and you still need to go all out, and that's just like totally different. But it's that same kind of game that you play, but just over a way more intense, shorter time period. So yeah, just two different sides of the coin of pain, suffering. But I think at the end of the day, the mental fortitude that you get from a session like this versus pushing through a VO2 max session or a 5K is similar, but it's good to round out the times and the ways that you've encountered those limits and pushed through them.
Yeah, so different types, but still that crazy amount of focus required, I think, but different types of pain.
Yeah, and honestly, my quads, so we are what, 48 hours out. We're recording this Monday night. And like my none of my joints hurt at all. The only thing that is uncomfortable is my quads. Whereas in a marathon, after a marathon, I like can't walk for the next week, basically. This, I can walk fairly well, but if I like stretch my quad a little bit, it's a more painful muscle pain than I've felt in all my endurance sports. This feels more like a really tough session after squatting heavy for the first time in a while. This is more similar to those DOMs than it is to like a marathon totally like broken in the lower body.
Now my question is, have you sat on a bike saddle since the day?
I don't know that I could. My sit bones are fairly sore, but better than I thought. And no, I have no attraction to the bike right now. However, if people are cycling tomorrow, I might still try to join the little BIM Tuesday race and see if I can blow up that Peloton before I blow up my legs.
Frig, I was going to say I'm in. I don't know about you, Andy, but I want to try to get a kick at maybe beating Brian one day.
If there was a day where people who don't normally beat me on the bike, tomorrow is the day. So if I get a call out, if there's messages going in the group, I will be on and try to join you guys.
Okay, I'm getting that message buzzing for tomorrow. Let's get it.
All right, I think before we move on a little bit and talk about some community things, Brian, I'd love to hear your like 30-second elevator pitch to someone that is considering a big endurance bike day, whether it's Everesting or some crazy long ultra biking event. Let's hear the pitch.
Okay, I'm going to give myself a few seconds of reflection before I actually pitch this. This is cycling only, you're saying?
I guess it can be running as well,
Okay.
but it just needs to be a big, like at least half-day effort.
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing.
Okay, my 2 cents would be ask yourself a few questions. The first is, do you know the physical limits of what you can do? And do you feel as though you've mastered your own mind when it comes to pushing yourself through pain and suffering. If you think you've done both of those, I think there's still a good reason to do a hard effort like this. And if not, then I would say this is a perfect tool, a long effort on the bike, on the feet, in the pool, whatever it might be, is a long and fairly healthy way to really understand yourself. There were things that I didn't know about myself before doing this event in terms of how I would handle that kind of pressure, where I would find that difficult moment. And it was also great to see myself come through to the other side after a successful day that was so big. And it wasn't like very fun, but it doesn't have to be, because you come out of the other side knowing more about yourself and knowing that you can do these crazy things. And I think that's really what the journey of an event or a day like that is all about, is the growth and also just a little bit more understanding about yourself. And the final 2 cents on that recommendation is, if you love biking, this isn't like a super fun thing to do. And if you've never done a crazy thing like this, maybe start with the half instead of the full Everest, because I think I would have gotten just as much out of the half Everest as I would have out of the full. Although the second half was a little bit more fun because I was in the pain cave for most of it, but then you get to come out the other side excited. Whereas like the first half was really when I started feeling that bad part.
Nice. I think that was a great sales pitch for a Type 2
I'm sold.
fun.
I'm friggin' sold.
Yeah, see, this is the thing. People say Type 2 fun, which is supposed to be bad in the moment, good afterwards. This might be Type 3 fun, which is bad in the moment and whatever afterwards. Because it was nice to get all these kudos and whatever and be done it finally, but I really wasn't as happy as I thought I would be. And maybe that was just from the fact that I had drained so much of my mental capacity being on the bike for that long, that by the time I finished, it wasn't like an endorphin high. It was more of a like lull of thank God that's done.
You were on top of Everest, so you were high as hell, that's for sure.
That's true. I was high as hell.
And one last stat before we move on to the community shoutouts and the BIM December challenge is the reason we're all doing this. Another wild stat I'm checking out right now, 54 likes and 21 comments. I would imagine that is probably your highest ever combined kudos comment bang right there on Strava. So that was all for the community right there.
Yeah, it's true. I would say maybe some of the marathons have come close to that, but for sure that is definitely some of the higher kudos and comments I've got. Maybe the most comments ever, because that is absolutely delulu doing that much. But yeah, it was lots of fun, and I do again want to thank everybody who like shouted out, commented, yeah, gave me texts throughout the day. It was really nice to have the community behind me. And I'm glad that I did those updates on Instagram. One, it'll live on forever, so I can show the kids the Unk lore soon enough once they want to start doing some freaky things. But yeah, it definitely made the day better. And by the end, I was like, if I got a comment from somebody, it was like, okay, this next rep up this hill is for that person specifically. So yeah, it was good. That was really good.
I love that. That is amazing.
So, shall we hop over to the community? Because I was not the only person who did a crazy thing this weekend or this past weekend. There were a lot of fish in Ottawa that were getting busy in the pool.
Yeah, I think you unlocked some beasts in everyone else doing the BIM December challenge. And I guess maybe the month is coming up to an end. And yeah, like you said, a lot of fish coming out of Ottawa. A couple shoutouts here. I'll give a few going down the list to, of course, no one but the Mustafa. He has done yet someone else's winter December challenge with the 10K swim. He joined Alain, which is part of the challenge as well. And another couple people joined in on it. Ezekiel, the guy who we've talked about him in the past as well. He did the 10K challenge. And then with a couple more people in the pool I saw in some of those pictures. So that looked like a wild day. Just a couple stats on their stuff too. I opened it up quick. Was so they did 10K in a moving time of just around 4 hours and with an elapsed time of about just over 5. They took their day, they spent it in the pool, shriveled up like a prune. And I don't know, honestly, if I'd be able to do 10K in one sitting, which is just bonkers to me. What do you guys think?
As a new fish in the pool, there's definitely no chance. I haven't even hit 2K in a session, and even 2K seems like a stretch goal, so I can't even think of 10K yet.
For me, it'd be just hard not to friggin' chat the whole time. We were in the pool this week, Andy, and we got, 1,100 meters in and maybe 2,200 words in? I don't know.
The one thing I'll say is if I could just sit behind Tyler and just tickle his toes and be in the slipstream, maybe I could hit 2K, but that's maybe.
Yeah, and now that I'm done this Everest challenge, doing something like 10K in the pool doesn't sound that horrible. Maybe my brain's broken a little bit and I'm still recovering, but I don't know. It sounds nice. It does definitely sound monotonous in terms of having to do 100 100s. But in terms of like the length of time, when I saw Hussein, who did it in a few hours, that's quite impressive. I know he's ripping fast in the pool, but if you've got a good group, and that's what I was saying to Adam today, is even something like the Everest Challenge, being able to do that with people, because he asked me if I'd ever do it again, and I said on one condition. I'd want to do it with a minimum of 3 other people at the same time. I would never do that solo. So if you guys are ever down to do 10K in the pool, I'm calling you both out. Knock on my door any day and hand me a pair of goggles. I'll flop and do some belly flops with you.
Frig, I'll even give you a swim cap. I'm in. I think, like you said, doing it together is a million times better than soloing it. And same with the Everest Challenge. I think I would be very tempted at doing it if we had this, let's call it new age LAN party, as instead of everyone on their Xbox in the same room, we just all hit the trainers and just do a trainer party. That would be very interesting to do as well. But yeah, big shout out as well to Hussein, which his December challenge was doing the 100 times 100, so 10K in the pool as well. And he did it literally in almost an hour and a half quicker than the Mustafa gang, because he is just a freak in the water as well. Like we had him on the podcast, national swim level swimmer. So he had it moving time in 2:42 with an elapsed time of just under 3.5 hours. So coming in and out of the pool, I would imagine going to the bathroom, nutrition, things like that. Not only did he do that, but he did this New Year's challenge as well. So he did 10K on land, 10K on the bike, and 10K swimming in that order on that Sunday, which is, I guess we're recording on Monday, so yesterday. And then he went out and ran today. So just unstoppable. That guy is a freak, and he's just freaky man, and amazing how he could do all these things and unreal achievements, and just keeps going. No stop on that guy.
Yeah, that is pretty nutty that he was able to do that much mileage in one day. Luckily, the bike gets over pretty quick. But yeah, I can only imagine, and especially finishing up with the pool in the wee hours of the night. I think it was like 9 p.m. when he started, or maybe a little bit earlier.
He was posting at 9, so I think he started around 7 and ended at around 10. Yeah, 10:30.
See, that's just crazy because that's after a long day. So good
yeah,
on
he
him.
started his day at 7.
Yeah,
like wild.
It is awesome to see the cool things that people are doing, the limits that people are pushing, and I think that's the other thing is just the fact that many people have different kind of goals and limits, and we're able to all move along together is really inspiring and just great to see. Like we were talking about Ian just before we hit the record button. He's doing over the full month the total Ironman distances in the pool, bike, and run, and he's nearly at the finish line. I think he just has a few K to run, but he has progressed so far and is continuing to progress, and that is just as motivating as seeing somebody like Hussein go into the pool and like absolutely smash basically 100 sprints. It's just awesome. This was a great idea, doing this challenge.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it better. And I'm fired up about the traction we got with this, and it really worked out well. And just some other final shoutouts, and I think we'll give them more of a deeper dive on the next episode now. The consistency challenges. So, like you said, Ian, Charlie, and Erica, the dynamic duo there, they're both at 98% complete. So, unless a meteor hits tomorrow or today, I think they're going to be done that challenge as well. And same with John and B, another dynamic duo there, finishing up their 5 miles a day for the month. And a sneak peek, he texted me today and he said, "Do you want to do one round of OT and celebrate on New Year's Day?" I said, "Sign me up." So this guy also is unstoppable, rolling into the new year with those crazy good habits. A lot of things to celebrate for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty cool seeing all the crazy things that everyone in the BIM community are doing. It honestly makes it super hard to not just jump on the bandwagon and have big goals. So I think that's pretty cool. I think it's very easy to go in like little slumps, endurance slumps. But when you have so many people doing stuff at different times, it's pretty hard to get into those slumps, or at least it's really easy to dig yourself out of them. So I'm very excited to see the 2026 BIM race calendar start to trickle in, because I think the fire is going to start roaring real soon.
Yeah.
100%. I've been trying to keep myself in a slump for the past couple weeks, and it's just impossible. So yeah, big shout outs to everybody.
Yeah, it's really great. And speaking about New Year's race plans, just so you know, me and Pete are both signed up for the Toronto half in the spring. I think Adam and Mark are signed up for Around the Bay. So a few races here in the GTA that people are starting to sign up for, that I think there's probably BIM teams for both of those events.
Yes, I know we have quite a bit. I haven't officially signed up, but I'm definitely doing the Toronto full. And I know we have quite a few other people that are going to be doing the Toronto spring race. So we'll definitely have a pretty good group, and always some post-race festivities to give ourselves a nice treat post-race, because we'll be getting big PRs. So I'm excited.
Oh yeah, I think
nice.
that post party is going to be even better than the race itself.
Yeah, awesome. To the community, just want to wish you a happy new year. We will see you in 2026. It's going to be an amazing year. It's going to be a big year. We've got a lot of fun stuff coming your way. And for those that are rounding out their December challenge, come meet me at the finish line. It is great to have completed and got that green check mark next to my name in Tyler's sheet.
I'm friggin' tracking. I got the Excel going. CTO is CTOing. We have those prizes ready for everybody, and yeah, we'll be distributing them accordingly. So I'm excited for that as well. Wear my new swag and with the new bottle and nutrition. Again, if you're chasing those year-end goals, make sure to just keep tagging Boys in Motion, jump on our Strava club, and make sure you let someone else know what we're doing so they could join us in that motion.
And this week, definitely a heavy disclaimer that we're not medical professionals or Sherpas, and that we can't assist you all the way up Everest. You'll have to do that work yourself. So if you're considering something crazy like this, definitely consult an expert and someone that might be a bit more sane than Brian.
I love it. So to all of you, finish the year strong, and let's start that next one hungry together. I'm ready for a feast of miles in the new year, and I hope that you are too. We will see you next time from the Pain Cave.